You know that word safe you see on food labels? We see it everywhere. But what if it's not quite the guarantee we all think it is? Well, today we're going to go deep inside our own cells to uncover this hidden conversation that's happening between our food and our genes. So, let's get into it. So let's just ask the question, what is safety actually guaranteeing us? You'd think it means, completely harmless. But what if the way we define harm is all about spotting a massive forest fire while totally missing, say, a slow, steady leak that's rotting the foundation of the house? Let's find out what's really being tested for.
Okay, to really get how that slow leak can happen, we've got to peek inside the ridiculously complex world of our own cells. And you've got to stop thinking about your DNA as just a simple blueprint. A better way to picture it, think of it like a massive, ancient library. And this library holds every single instruction needed to build and run, well, you.
Now, in this library, the books, which are your genes, right? They're not just sitting out on some open shelf for anyone to grab. They're packed away in this incredibly complex 3D shelving system called Chromatin. This whole structure is constantly winding and unwinding, deciding which books are available to be read and which ones are locked away. It's this physical act, this opening and closing, that is literally everything.
So what's powering this whole library operation? I mean, who's paying the light bill? Who's staffing the librarians? That would be your metabolism. It's that constant hum of chemical reactions turning the food you eat into energy and raw materials. It's the power grid, it's the supply chain, it's the entire economy that makes the cell run. Okay, and this right here, this is the absolute game changer. This is the key. Your genes don't just act on their own. They don't just decide to turn on. It turns out the real boss, the head librarian who decides which sections of this massive library are open for business, is the metabolic state of the cell itself. The energy it has, the specific molecules floating around, that's what calls the shots. Yeah, your metabolism is in the driver's seat, period.
All right, so if metabolism is in the driver's seat and food is the fuel for the engine, then what happens when we start putting some, let's say, questionable fuel in the tank? How can the things we eat, especially certain additives, begin to subtly mess with this whole genetic library system?
And this is where things get really interesting. The source material refers to certain food additives as epigenetic stressors. Now, these things don't have to be toxic in the way we usually think of it. They're not directly breaking your DNA. Instead, I want you to think of them as this persistent low-level static. Just this humming in the background of the cell. It's not a loud explosion. It's a constant, subtle pressure on that metabolic engine.
So you can see how this chain reaction plays out step by step. First, you eat the additive. Then it creates that static we talked about, right? It interferes with the cell's energy, its signals. And that, in turn, gums up the works for the enzymes that manage chromatin, our little cellular librarians. They get sluggish, inefficient. And you do that over and over, for months, for years. And that chronic stress can actually change which genes are left open and which ones get locked away. It's fundamentally altering how your cells are operating.
So where does all this leave us with that word safe? Well, this whole cellular chain reaction exposes this massive gap between the legal definition of safety and the biological reality that's actually happening inside of us. And honestly, this is the whole point.
I mean, just look at this comparison. It says it all. On the left, you've got regulatory safety. It's basically asking one thing. Does this stuff cause a 5-alarm fire? Does it cause cancer? Does it directly shred your DNA? It's a simple pass-fail test for immediate, catastrophic damage. But then, on the right, you have biological neutrality, and it's asking a much smarter question. It's asking, hey, does this substance mess with the cell's normal day-to-day operations? Does it create that metabolic static, even if it doesn't actually burn the whole building down?
This quote really just nails it. It says, a substance may be legally safe and yet biologically non-neutral, capable of slowly detuning chromatin regulation through metabolic pressure. Detuning. I mean, isn't that the perfect word for it? You're not breaking the instrument, you're just slowly knocking it out of tune. One additive, one meal at a time.
So, look, this isn't just some fascinating little science lesson. This new way of thinking, this distinction between safe and neutral, it gives us a really powerful new lens for looking at our long-term health.
Because when you start looking through this lens, a lot of the chronic diseases that we all face today, well, maybe they're not just bad luck or bad genes after all. It's possible they're the logical, long-term outcome of decades of that low-level metabolic static, that slow detuning of our genetic orchestra. It's a huge shift in thinking, right? From what part is broken to what is causing this system to be under constant, subtle stress.
Okay, so let's boil this all down. What are the key takeaways here? The things you absolutely need to remember. First, your metabolism is the boss of your genes. Got it. Second, everyday food additives can act as those metabolic stressors we talked about, creating that background static. Third, and this is the big one, regulatory safe does not mean the same thing as biologically neutral, not even close. And finally, number 4, this chronic low-level stress can, over time, change how your genes are expressed.
And that leaves us with a really important question to think about. Now that you know that safe is really just the bare minimum and that the real goal might actually be biologically neutral, how does that change the way you look at an ingredient list on a package? And look, this isn't about being afraid of food. It's about having a new kind of awareness, a new set of questions. So what questions are you going to start asking about the fuel you're putting in your tank?